A simple woman was mocked the moment her boot hit the gravel, called ma'am like a punchline, mistaken for cafeteria staff, laughed at for her limp, her age, her silence. Recruits draped in custom patches and swagger dismissed her as an admin fluke or washed-up observer. They cracked jokes about vending machines and visitor passes while she stood still, her eyes tracking every flaw in their tactics. No one knew she was the only one with real-world clearance, the only one who'd led live hostage extractions. When chaos erupted at a nearby courthouse and the command center froze, she picked up the comms, gave 3 calm orders, and ended the siege without a shot fired. The next day, black SUVs rolled in, and the president's envoy was revealed, not some suit from D.C., but the quiet woman they had mocked. And when she spoke, no one interrupted. Not one. The Federal Tactical Training Compound looked like it had been carved from steel and poured concrete. Chain-link fencing laced with coils of razor wire bordered the perimeter. Inside the gates, gravel crunched under heavy boots as a fresh wave of recruits filed toward the first registration tent. Tower climbs and shooting galleries flanked either side of a wide obstacle course. Glass-paneled briefing rooms overlooked the yard from a second-floor mezzanine. The sun hung low and sharp, slicing across the walls in long, white angles. Beneath that light, Sabrina stepped out of the transport van, her boots landing in dust. She was older than most of them, late 30s. Her step had a slight hesitation in the left leg, not dramatic but visible to anyone paying attention. No performance patches on her plate carrier, no personalized trauma shears or designer holsters, just standard-issue gear, fitted without flair. A single notebook stuck out from the front pouch, worn soft at the corners. A scar marked her right knuckle, raised and pale, like something healed years ago. Dominic Granger spotted her first. He was already in line, arms crossed, jaw sharp, tactical shades pushed high on his forehead. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said as she passed. "Mess hall's that way." The joke was loud enough for a ripple of chuckles to follow. Sabrina didn't flinch. She continued forward, her hands relaxed by her sides, her eyes scanning the training yard as if measuring it. Evan Royce, another recruit in a sleeveless compression shirt with a laminated patch reading "Big Dog" slapped to his chest, turned to Granger. "Civilian insert or cafeteria audit?" He smirked, tugging on the tab of his hydration pack. "Either way, I give her 3 days before she taps out." Recruits gathered in clumps, gear bags slung over shoulders, energy loud and clashing. Some were former military, others from state-level tactical teams. Their banter carried names of past deployments, brand drops, and personal records like currency. Sabrina was an absence in the noise. No one stood near her. No one made space. The first instructor appeared, Captain Willis, silver-haired with a clipboard tucked against his chest. He read names from the list, calling each recruit forward with brisk efficiency. Granger. A hand shot up. Royce. A nod. Chen. Here. Then. Sabrina Dale. The pause was subtle but real. Willis's eyes drifted from the page to her face. He gave the faintest squint before checking her off. "Proceed." She gave a single nod and stepped back. No comment. No confusion. "Dale," Granger said under his breath. "That's a librarian's name." Royce leaned in. "Watch. By tomorrow she'll be organizing the first aid cabinet alphabetically." Sabrina stood still. The notebook tucked against her gear didn't move. Her gaze remained forward. They were corralled into formation by another instructor, who explained the weak structure in clipped commands. Sabrina kept her hands clasped lightly behind her back. Every few seconds, she blinked and adjusted her weight slightly on her good leg. Around her, boots shuffled, jokes passed back and forth like signals in a private code. She remained outside all of it. Later, as they jogged past the compound's high concrete wall, someone veered closer to her side and whispered, "Hope you brought office shoes, ma'am. This week's gonna shred those boots." She didn't respond. She didn't pick up pace. She kept to her rhythm. By the time they broke for hydration, a few recruits were already red-faced, their tactical gear loosened for air. Granger unhooked his helmet and let it swing lazily from his fingers. She even know how to breach a door, he said to no one in particular. Bet she read a book about it once. Royce laughed. She's got that, observer vibe, like she's here for the paperwork. Sabrina pulled her notebook from the pouch and jotted something quickly before returning it. The pen clicked once. Her fingers moved with economy. No flair, no visible emotion. At the equipment station, she selected her kit with methodical precision. No questions. No stumbles. One of the junior instructors raised an eyebrow at her choices, but didn't speak. As the group gathered again near the rappel tower, Layla Chen approached Sabrina and gave her a once-over. Lost. Ma'am, she said, gesturing up the structure. This one's for the action folks. Her voice was coated in politeness, but the intent landed like a slap. Sabrina turned her head slightly, then looked back toward the tower. She said nothing. Someone else muttered, "Hope she packed snacks. She's going to be waiting at the bottom a long time." Granger and Royce high-fived. The joke had landed. The instructor finally barked for silence. The next drill would start soon. Sabrina stepped into formation again, calm and centered. Her notebook was now zipped away. Her hands rested by her sides. She hadn't smiled once, hadn't asked a single question, but the way she held herself made one thing clear. She was not confused, she was not nervous, and she was not going away. The mock raid was staged to resemble a hostage standoff in an abandoned suburban complex, weather-warped plywood walls, fake blood packets taped to mannequins, sound grenades timed to simulate panic. Inside, 2 instructors wore black masks and pretended to be armed suspects. A loudspeaker barked. Mission parameters as the recruits loaded up breach the front. Rescue the hostages. Eliminate all threats. Dominic Granger took command before anyone asked. He mapped out a plan that relied entirely on aggression. Evan Royce backed him with hand-slapped enthusiasm. Layla Chen stood nearby, twirling a marker in her hand, adding sarcastic asides like set dressing. Sabrina listened from the edge of the group, noting a blind corner that would be left unchecked in Granger's plan. She spoke once, voice level. "You'll have a gap at the northeast exit. If they circle that flank, it'll cross your line of fire." Granger didn't even look at her. "Thanks for the audit. Dale, we'll keep that in mind." Royce grinned, tactical librarian at work. No one adjusted the plan. No one asked for clarity. They charged the compound 5 minutes later. The result was chaos. Entry timing fractured within the first 10 seconds. 2 recruits advanced before flashbang detonation. One slipped and accidentally discharged his paint round into a bystander wall. From the unguarded northeast exit, a masked instructor stepped out, tagged 3 with simulated kill shots. Another instructor dragged a foam hostage dummy into the crossfire path. Granger froze mid-call-out. Layla panicked and broke formation. Royce fell into a fake blood pool that hadn't even been triggered yet. The simulation failed. An instructor blew the whistle and stepped out, shaking his head. Granger ripped off his mask. "That was a joke," he muttered, glaring across the lot. "We got wrecked." Royce pulled off his vest and pointed across the lot at Sabrina, who hadn't even moved from her station. "What was the point of you again? We need operators, not observers." Sabrina walked away without a word. In her real notebook, she later diagrammed the formation breakdown, timing misalignments, and every error she'd predicted. No one saw the pages. No one asked. By midday, the cafeteria was a grid of noise, tables filled with gear bags, tossed gloves, and half-eaten rations. Groups self-sorted along familiarity, military with military, law enforcement legacies with each other. Sabrina entered with her tray and scanned the room. Every seat was taken. Every open space was filled the moment she stepped toward it. She found the corner table, a metal slab with chipped paint and a dent in the middle. She sat alone, untouched food in front of her, elbows close to her ribs. Granger's voice carried from a table at the center of the room. "Some of us are here to operate, not audit the furniture." Layla stood from the same table and sauntered toward Sabrina with a mock smile. She held a thin, bright yellow notebook in one hand, blank, plastic, and new. "Here," she said, placing it gently on the table. "Take notes. Professor, you might catch up in a few years." Her voice was syrupy, high-pitched, and mean. The notebook landed next to Sabrina's untouched fork. It gleamed under the fluorescent light, garish and absurd. Sabrina didn't look up. She didn't touch the notebook. The entire cafeteria paused, watching for a response. None came. Layla held her smile another second, then walked away. Someone at the table snorted. "Hope she's writing a cookbook. She's got the kitchen stare." No one called them out. No instructor intervened. Later, in the barracks hallway, Sabrina passed 2 recruits whispering near the equipment lockers. One glanced at her boots and said, not quite quietly, "Doesn't even scuff the mats. You'd think she was allergic to dirt." The other shrugged. "Probably a quota fill. Optics over output." The buzz of cruelty wasn't explosive. It was slow, creeping, and safe in numbers. Inside the dorm, Sabrina sat at the small desk tucked beneath her bunk. Her real notebook lay open. She cross-referenced a layout schematic from the compound drill and added 3 underlined notes beneath a hand-drawn arrow. In the silence, the overhead lights hummed faintly. From the hallway, someone knocked a locker too hard. Laughter followed. A voice said, "Hope she brought a pillow for the tower rappel. Wouldn't want to twist her precious knee." The walls weren't thick. She heard it all. Her pen didn't pause. By lights out, the barracks dimmed. Conversation thinned. Sabrina's tray from lunch had never been touched. It still sat on her desk. One corner of the bread roll slightly hardened. She tucked her notebook into the vest pocket and lay back on the bunk, one hand over her scarred knuckle. Around her, the sounds of exhausted bodies settling into sleep. Granger's voice filtered through the dark, chuckling over something he had said. No one mentioned the failure during the drill. No one acknowledged that Sabrina had warned them in advance. Instead, she was the fixed point, the ghost, the figure in the room they all insisted wasn't real. But she was watching. Sabrina's knees hit the training mat in a smooth roll. Chalk dust clung to the fabric of her tactical pants, fading only slightly as she shifted upright. Her rope descent was flawless, controlled, fluid, no bounce on landing. Behind her, another recruit came down hard, stumbling on impact. Granger shouted something sarcastic from above, but no one addressed her technique, not even the instructor, who paused a breath too long before calling the next name. Later in movement drills, she advanced through a simulated apartment hallway with no wasted steps. Her muzzle angles were precise, her corners clean. She never broke formation because she was never allowed into one. Still, she moved through the space like she knew it already, checking blind spots before anyone else looked twice. Equipment checks followed. Recruits groaned, wiped sweat from their necks, and unlatched their gear. One radio harness was misthreaded belt clip backward, loose enough to fall during live movement. Sabrina spotted it. She lifted the edge of the strap, corrected the loop, and reset the fastener without a word. The owner never noticed. Only Marcus Tolan, younger than most and quiet in his own way, seemed to catch the difference. He approached during cooldown, water bottle in hand, posture relaxed but observant. "Did you serve before?" he asked. "Your steps in that stack were perfect." Sabrina didn't turn. She folded her gloves and tucked them away before answering. "I observe more than I train." Marcus frowned slightly, confused but respectful. He didn't press further. That evening, the dorm room flickered under 2 bright fluorescent lights. Locker doors opened and slammed. Showers hissed down the hall. Ego swirled in low murmurs, boasts, complaints, replayed moments from the day, retold with edits. Granger held court near his bunk, talking about breaching stances. Layla laughed too loudly at something Evan said. Marcus sat near the edge of his bed, replaying drone footage from a GoPro. In the far corner, Sabrina sat alone. A small screen glowed in front of her. Surveillance footage from earlier drills, grainy but revealing. She slowed the playback to frame by frame. Her pen moved in her real notebook, quick marks next to time codes, foot placement, sight angles. In one freeze frame, a recruit aimed too wide on a hallway bend. In another, a gap in coverage lingered 3 seconds too long. She noted both without emotion. The room behind her churned with noise and heat, the stench of sweat-drenched gear and unwashed socks. She remained still, the screen reflecting faintly in her eyes. Just after lights out, someone passed her locker. A piece of plastic tapped quietly against the metal door. In the dark, no one looked. The next morning, she approached her locker and found a laminated visitor pass taped over the vent slot. It was pink, slightly bent, the type used for civilian guests on base. Someone had scrawled "Thanks for stopping by" in marker across the front. She peeled it off with one hand and folded it into her notebook. Across the room, Granger watched, half smirking. Layla leaned into Evan's side, whispering something that made him snort. Marcus stood frozen beside his bunk, eyes fixed on the empty space where the pass had hung. No one claimed credit. No one had to. Outside, drills resumed. Sabrina rappelled down the west tower, ran a staggered sprint course, then cleared a structure with no verbal commands. Her timing was measured against a digital board and posted quietly in the instructor's file. No mention was made in the briefing that followed. She remained unmentioned, unpraised, unranked. But one instructor lingered longer over her shoulder than the others. That night, in the privacy of her bunk corner, Sabrina removed the visitor pass from her notebook. She smoothed it flat, then slipped it behind the back cover. Her fingers stayed there a moment longer than necessary. Not angry, not shaken, just still. The mock compound was the largest they'd seen yet. Full-scale urban layout, built from plywood facades and hollow buildings painted to resemble real storefronts. Metal scaffolding ran across rooftops, alleyways narrowed to choke points, and simulated blood streaked the windows beside plastic mannequins posed as hostages. Role players in ballistic helmets prepped inside with blank-firing rifles. The air already smelled like scorched primer and sandbag dust. Dominic Granger strutted to the command board like it belonged to him. "I'll lead," he said, grabbing the marker. "Chen and Royce, breach team 1, Tolan, flank with interior support. We clear clockwise. Push 2-2 stack on the stairwell." His voice rose with each assignment. No one mentioned Sabrina, not until the roster reached its final slot. Granger glanced over his shoulder. "Dale, you can monitor air pressure or something. Make sure the radios don't get bored." A few recruits laughed. No one looked her in the eye. Sabrina said nothing. Instead, she approached the instructor's table and handed over a sealed folder. Inside were her notes diagrams, a full sweep plan, optimal placement for breach points, hostage positioning logic based on light, space, and delay behavior. The instructor flipped through the first page. His thumb paused on a schematic. Then he closed it, unreadable, and placed it face down on the bench. Granger barked for loadout. The team moved. They entered fast, loud. Flashbangs popped in rapid succession, white smoke leaping through open doorways. Chen missed through hers. It bounced off the wall and detonated near a hostage. Role players screamed. Simulated blood splattered across the floor mats. Roy stumbled while clearing a corner and took a shot to the side. He went down, cursing. Granger shouted overlapping commands over comms. Marcus hesitated near a stairwell. His foot lifted, unsure which order to follow. Above, 2 role players opened fire with blanks. The noise cracked hard. Granger spun, missed the angle, and took a hit on the vest. He shouted into the radio, demanding backup. "No eyes on upper threat. Who's clearing 3? 2 is down. We lost flank." A voice Layla's crackled through static. "We've got a hostage down. Repeat, we've got a hostage casualty." More blanks fired. Another flash. Smoke churned from the stairwell and poured into the main corridor. Back outside, Sabrina stood near the command van. Her arms rested loose by her sides. Her weight shifted subtly forward, as if her body had recognized the moment before her mind gave it permission. The instructor near the van adjusted his headset, muttering, "What the hell are they doing in there?" The radio feed filled with shouts. Granger ordered a fallback. Marcus tried to drag a role player to safety but slipped on synthetic blood. Chen tripped over her own shell casing. Another fake hostage screamed as smoke curled up the walls. Visibility dropped. Timing fell apart. Calls overlapped again. Where is support? We need an outside call. The command station scrambled. No one answered. Everyone was listening. Sabrina's eyes tracked the line of movement across the compound. Her gaze moved like a map, tracing gaps, estimating time. Behind her, the unused headset hung on its hook still untouched. Silent. Inside the compound, the chaos reached a pitch. A role player burst from a closet and fired 2 blanks at close range. The last 2 recruits dropped. The horn blared. Simulation failed. Smoke rolled out the doors as instructors stepped forward. Arms crossed. One waved a red flag to signal hard stop. The recruits staggered outside, gear askew, paint markers dripping from chest rigs. Granger looked furious, sweat streaking his temple. Royce cursed under his breath. Chen avoided eye contact. Sabrina hadn't moved. One instructor glanced her way, lips pressed tight. Then he turned back to the others. Granger tore off his helmet and stalked past the van. His voice snapped out, bitter and defensive. This was a mess because people hesitated, because some of us were distracted by civilians who think they belong in tactical theaters. Royce added, "We needed clarity, not silence." Chen muttered. She just stood there, just watched. Marcus said nothing. He sat on the edge of the loading platform, elbows on his knees, staring at the dirt. Sabrina remained quiet. The folder she had submitted earlier sat untouched, still closed on the instructor's bench. Smoke drifted in lazy arcs across the yard, curling around her boots. Her fingers twitched once, a breath away from action. But not yet. Sirens tore across the sky before anyone understood what was happening. An instructor's phone lit up, then another. The simulation compound fell silent as the first alert echoed through the base-wide intercom, Federal Courthouse. Hostage situation. Real time. Real threat. Everything shifted. The instructors snapped to motion. Radios crackled with overlapping frequencies. Recruits were ordered to the benches, stripped of active gear, told to stay seated and silent. Tactical vans screeched from the motor bay, half loaded with teams still zipping up their vests. A lieutenant sprinted across the yard yelling for codebooks. No one was ready. The morning had been about drills, ego, paint rounds. Now it was real. The compound's central command center flickered with heat and noise. Surveillance feeds loaded in patches. A map of the federal building glitched onto a dusty monitor. Outside, wind kicked up the dust from failed simulations. Inside, no one was in charge. Sabrina moved without sound. She stepped away from the wall of seated recruits and crossed the yard with calm, deliberate steps. No panic. No question. She reached the tactical van, where a senior instructor was juggling 3 radios and a satellite phone. Behind him, the communications bench sat empty, unused for years. "I'll take comms," she said. He turned, startled. His eyes scanned her face, ready to dismiss. Then they stopped. Sabrina was already slipping on a plate carrier, not in a rush, not slow, just right. Behind her, Layla snorted. "She's serious." Royce leaned into Granger's ear. "Can't wait for this show." But the instructor nodded once. "Tight. Fine. Take that station. No clutter. Keep channel 1 clear." Sabrina sat down, plugged in, adjusted the boom mic. Her breath, slow and silent, passed through the headset as she clicked live. "This is Command Base 2. Federal response." Her voice was not loud, but it sliced through the channel like steel. "Suspect. You are being recorded. We have eyes on you. You are surrounded. I need you to confirm the number of hostages and the reason you entered the building." There was no performance in her tone, no strain, just truth. The command center went quiet. Even instructors stopped moving. Granger, halfway through a joke, froze mid-grin. Marcus sat straighter on the bench. The technician by the map feed glanced up. On screen, the hostage-taker shifted. The man held a rifle, pressed against the chest of a woman in a navy blazer. He shouted something off mic, then fumbled for the radio. "I don't know who you are," the voice came back, cracked and wired, "but I want air support off the roof and no snipers near the stairwell. You try anything, I start shooting." Sabrina's eyes stayed fixed on the feed. "We've already pulled units from the roof," she said, "and I'm not sending anyone through the front entrance. You're scared. I get that. But the way out isn't violence. It's control." A pause. The man breathed hard into the comms. "You don't get it. No one does." "I do," Sabrina said. "You think you're alone. You think this is your only move. But I've been in tighter rooms than yours, and I've walked out every time. Let me walk you out now." "In the back of the room," a tech whispered. "What is this?" An instructor shook his head. "It's operational." Sabrina flicked a switch and opened the second channel, an encrypted internal line. "Agent Mora and Agent Diaz," she said calmly. "Advance from North Alley. There's a rear stairwell unguarded. Cut the second-floor hallway. No sudden movement. Confirm visual before breach." The agents responded immediately. No one questioned who she was anymore. On screen, they moved into position just as the suspect stepped away from the hostage, yelling toward the front window. He never saw the agents approach. Sabrina muted her mic for half a second. Her eyes never left the feed. When she spoke again, it was almost gentle. "You've got 30 seconds. Make the right choice. I want you out of there breathing." The man's hands twitched. The rifle dropped an inch. Then he let it fall. The woman stumbled away. Agents closed in. No one fired. No one got hurt. The feed locked on a final image, the suspect on his knees, hands laced over his head, the hostage crying into her sleeve, the field agent confirming scene secure, all hostages accounted for. In the control room, silence hung like a weight. Sabrina reached up, removed the headset, and placed it on the table with care. The same instructor who had dismissed her folder now looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. His mouth opened, closed. No words came. Granger sat slouched on the bench, face blank. Layla stared at the floor. Marcus watched her like a man realizing he'd missed something sacred. The dust from the compound still swirled outside the van, catching in the light. Sabrina adjusted her plate carrier and stood. No declaration, no grin, no demand for recognition. Just the truth, laid bare for anyone finally willing to see it. The sky pulsed with the slow rotation of helicopter blades. Dust curled up from the yard as wind pressed down over the training compound. Recruits stood shoulder to shoulder, squinting into the glare. No one knew what was coming. The command intercom had said, "Only full formation. Report to the central yard. Final evaluations." Then the black SUVs arrived. 3 of them, silent, armored, dark windows. From the first vehicle stepped 2 agents in full federal dress, Homeland Security insignia glinting under the sun. The second SUV delivered a man in a dark suit, no tie, with a sealed folder tucked beneath one arm. He moved to the front of the group and spoke without microphone or fanfare. "Yesterday's courthouse rescue was not part of your training," he said. "It was not a drill. It was a real threat. And the individual who guided the response from this base is not a recruit." Murmurs cut the air. Granger stiffened. Layla blinked rapidly. Royce looked down. The third SUV opened. Sabrina stepped out. Gone was the plain plate carrier. She wore a sharp tactical suit, black and fitted, marked with the Presidential Counter-Extremism Task Force insignia stitched above the chest. Her badge gleamed from the lanyard looped at her waist. She walked with the same steady gait, her posture calm, deliberate. The limp still faintly marked her step, but nothing about her moved like an underdog anymore. The Homeland Commander turned, nodded once. "Special Agent Sabrina Dale," he said. "Senior Field Strategist, credentialed operative in 7 jurisdictions, liaison to the President's Office for Internal Resilience and Extremist Threat Mitigation." No one breathed. Her gaze moved across the yard. She didn't meet anyone's eyes. Granger's mouth opened, then closed. His shoulders sagged. Evan Royce looked sick. Layla turned red up to her ears, trying not to look at anyone at all. The commander lifted the folder. We reviewed all simulation footage, field notes, internal squad dynamics. Agent Dale's evaluations are precise. Her warnings were ignored. Her observations confirmed a toxic pattern of self-assurance, resistance to adaptive intelligence, and failure to integrate feedback. A clipboard snapped. Dominic Granger. The commander called. Dismissed. Failure to command under stress. Disregard for collaborative structure. You will not return. Granger took a step forward. Sir, with respect, I led. You failed, the man interrupted. This is not up for discussion. Two agents approached. Granger hesitated, then walked. Evan Royce, Layla Chen, dismissed. Layla gasped. Royce turned pale. They followed, silent. Another name was read, someone who had laughed too loud, too often. A third, who had joined in the late-night insults. They were gone in minutes. Rows of lockers now stood half-empty behind them. Marcus Tolan remained, his knuckles clenched, but he held his place. The commander stepped back. All eyes returned to Sabrina. She faced the formation not raised above them, not apart, just still. Then she spoke, only once. Loud doesn't mean right, she said, and rank doesn't mean readiness. The words didn't rise in tone. They didn't punch. They landed like fact. The commander nodded. That will be all. A few more agents dispersed. The helicopters lifted again, wind tearing through the open yard. Sabrina stepped back toward the SUV. The commander caught her shoulder briefly. Well led, he said, nothing more. When the vehicles pulled away, a strange silence settled across the remaining recruits. Not victory, not shame alone, but clarity. The training compound felt quieter now. No more laughter echoing between drills. No more snide remarks passed beneath breath. The remaining recruits moved with purpose, each movement stripped of bravado. The failure that once defined them had grown into something sharper awareness. Sabrina was no longer in the yard. She wasn't visible during lineup or lunch, but her presence lingered in the way instructors barked with less sarcasm, more precision, in the way Marcus Tolan double-checked each schematic before committing. He stayed late most nights, crouched beneath bunk lights, replaying simulation feeds with a notebook in hand. Then came the offer. A sealed envelope slid beneath his door. Specialized track authorization. Supervisor S. Dale. The next day, they met alone at the training annex. No uniforms, no formality. Sabrina stood at the end of a mat, hands behind her back. You said you observe more than you train, Marcus said quietly. I still do, she replied. He moved through the drill's slow breach, hostage extraction, tactical retreat. Her corrections were few, never raised, just a shift in hand placement, a quiet word on timing. He didn't speak much during their sessions. Neither did she. But by the third day, he moved like someone who'd learned how to see. On the fourth day, she didn't return. Instead, a dog-eared notebook waited on the steel bench where she had once reviewed her notes alone. Its cover was scuffed, pages lined with diagrams, evaluations entries made in ink that looped with precision. A final sentence stretched across the last page in clean block letters. Humility is the most tactical position. Marcus read it twice. Then again. He didn't take the notebook with him. He left it on the bench, where others could find it. Word spread quickly. By the next morning, recruits were flipping through the pages. No gossip, no bravado, just quiet flipping, nods, and long pauses. One instructor passed by, stopped to read a few pages, then adjusted his stance as if standing straighter mattered now. At midday, Sabrina walked once more across the compound. This time, the instructor stood when she passed, not out of habit, not formality, but because something in them had shifted. She didn't slow. She didn't nod. She simply moved forward, steps unhurried, eyes fixed. The black SUV waited at the far gate. Before reaching it, she paused once inside the main hallway. On the right wall stood the display case, glass clean and gleaming. Inside it hung framed photos of past SWAT cohorts groups lined up in rows, faces proud, some grinning. Sabrina looked once. Her reflection appeared there, ghosted across the glass. Not centered, not spotlighted, just a presence layered over the images of those who'd come before. She didn't touch the glass, didn't speak. Then she turned. The SUV door opened. She stepped inside. It shut with a soft click. No engine roar, no lights flashing, just departure. The compound resumed around her absence. Marcus watched the hallway for a long time before heading back to the bench. He picked up her notebook and began again. They dismissed her before they knew her, mocked her limp, her silence, her lack of flair. But Sabrina never needed to prove herself through noise. She watched. She learned. She acted when it mattered most. While others boasted, she listened. While they stumbled, she led. And when the time came, she saved lives not with glory, but with calm, practiced precision. This was not a story of revenge. It was a story of truth, of what it means to carry strength that does not seek applause, of how humility, when rooted in skill, becomes unshakable power. Sabrina walked away without demanding recognition, and that is exactly why she earned it. If her story made you pause, if it reminded you of your own quiet resilience, share your thoughts below. Follow for more stories that honor the ones who go unseen and still change everything.